us a bit about your background.
Yeah, hi, okay, wait, I'm sorry. Should I redo my name again, everything again?
Just go.
Okay, yeah, guys, I grew up in Natal, in the Midlands. Went to primary school in the Midlands, and then I went to high school in the Midlands, Marisburg as well. But growing up, grew up with my mother, my two sisters, but not so much together because I was in boarding school, I think, since the age of 8, which was, I think, to me a good experience. Um, and growing up, I was my life oriented or revolved a lot around sport. I was quite involved in sports. I think for a long time in my life, probably till today, sports has played a significant role in my life. I grew up primarily playing rugby. Also played hockey and judo at a national level, hockey at provincial level, rugby at a national level, at a provincial level as well, competing nationally. And yeah, so sports was quite integral in my life growing up.
Sounds like in some way or another things were quite well structured within your life.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly, I mean, it was, I guess it was, and I think a lot of that I would attribute it to sports because as an aspiring boy wanting to play sports professionally, it required that mental fitness from a young age in terms of wanting to get things done and somewhat having a mindset or mind map of how to get to where I wanted to get. Often I speak, just for people generally. I think three questions that, I often ask myself growing up. Till today, I ask myself those three questions. I think it's a question that anybody and everybody could possibly apply in their lives. Is where am I, which is how the status quo is right now. Where do I want to be, and that forms part of the vision. Where do you see yourself? What do you aspire to? And then thirdly, perhaps most importantly, is how do I get there? And that now, that's where you need to sit down and just draw the roadmap in terms of, okay, this is where I am, that's where I need to be, what's the best route to get there? And it's just, that's what I decided, is that structure you speak of is important, I can't just cruise and expect things to happen. So structure was definitely key in trying to get to where I wanted to be.
Sounds like sport contributed a lot to just your outlook on life and how you, in many ways, just positioned yourself. But are you playing sports now? Because you mentioned that an aspiration was to play professionally. Talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I'm not playing sports, or at least formally, or anything near professional right now. I am, however, playing social rugby, which I mean, I think the change in that, I think I will speak on just a bit later. Just explaining exactly, or in terms of how sports, seemingly as it plays such a big role. Why is it not in my life right now as much as I aspired for it to be at this stage where I'm at right now?
What was the sport that you found yourself pulling towards in a way?
Yeah, undoubtedly rugby. I just think I think my earliest memory, I think, was I was 8, if not 7, when I started playing rugby, and it was just I guess just the fact that I think when I played it, I excelled in it a bit more than other sports. But I think more than that, it's just I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how the love came about, but I just think it came about just the more I played it, the more I loved it.
The more you got better at it,
The more the better, yeah.
And what caused the end?
The rugby. Right. Okay, so beginning of high school. I'll just fast forward to beginning of high school where it was an all boys school. We competed amongst the best schools in the country in terms of rugby, and the rugby culture was quite big, as you'd imagine in most boys school anywhere in the country. And I excelled obviously there throughout my junior years in high school, grade 8, grade 9. Fortunate, and here's the thing is that with sports playing a big role in my life, it wasn't just sports being there. I think for me it was what it did for me psychologically. Sports channeled my mind to strive for excellence in everything I do. Right now, entering high school, academically I wasn't really um, astute or you know academically focused. My focus was just sports, but I think the more I strive for excellence and to just get better in rugby, uh, that mentality somewhat just spread across to every area of my life. Spiritually, I think I grew a lot in my spiritual walk, and also academically. I put on lots of effort. I think at the end of my grade 8 year, my maths mark I think I was like on 28%, kid you not. And I think my highest mark was a high 50. So grade 9 got better. By the time I was in grade 10, I was actually in the top set for maths. And I'd done well, and that's what I think rugby, and to be honest, if I ask myself what happened, I think it was just all came in my strive for excellence on the sports field, which then, somewhat just fell right through to every area of my life as well. Even things such as my relationships with my family, that too I took, care of as well. I'm not saying my life was perfect, not at all, but there was definitely an upward trajectory in everything that I did, and so that's what it was. And then fortunately, through because here's a question I'd often ask myself when I was obviously just training to get better at rugby, because obviously I wanted to compete professionally and nationally, is that while I'm sitting here on a weekend at school, what do how do I know what the guy that I'll be competing against at trials a few weeks down the line or a few months down the line is doing right now? I, I had no clue whatsoever. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put in the extra work whenever and however I can. I'd wake up in the morning. I think we had to be up at 6 in boarding school. I was up at least at 5 most times, summer and winter, on the sports field, running, getting fitter, doing my passing, doing my kicking, whatever it was. And that filtered through to the classroom as well. I struggled in the classroom. I wasn't the brightest. I still think I'm not the brightest. But one thing that I could probably, give myself is I worked hard. I think I'm a relatively hard worker, and that's exactly what I did. After obviously in the evenings it would be bedtime. I would sneak out, go to the classrooms, get a desk, bring it up to my dormitory, and I'd work there for a good 2 hours afterwards. And I'd go to bed 11, 12 at night, and then in the mornings before breakfast, take the desk back, go to breakfast, and that's what it was. Just that striving for excellence, striving to be better as a person. And for me, that's what sport did for me. And so yeah, grade 10, I managed to get into a first in rugby. I think I was probably the first grade 10, I think, in 7 years to play first team rugby before that. And that was quite an achievement for me. And then the following year, still in the first team, which is quite good, and I made it to the provincial side, to the junior Sharks team that year. And then my matric year, same thing. Obviously got into the Sharks junior under 18 side as well there, which for me was which was quite an achievement. And obviously in those 3 years playing first team rugby as well. And so it was quite fulfilling. But then again, the same principle carried through. In the classroom, I still worked as hard. Now, school I went to, we had A levels and AS levels, and that was not one of the easiest schooling systems to get through. Matter of fact, I think it's probably one of the most difficult in the world. But so my marks again, just took a dip. Although the work ethic was there, which is what made me happy. The work ethic was there, and I believe in just putting in the work, the results will speak for themselves eventually. And that's what it was. Is that I struggled quite a bit, although I was putting in a lot of work throughout grade 11, matric year, and then eventually at the end, I guess the results were there. And and I'd got on a contract to go join the Lions rugby team in my post schooling year. And so my future was looking bright. Academics were alright, not great, alright to get into varsity. And my sport, I guess, was speaking for itself. And then unfortunately, on the now, okay, no, you can ask the question there.
You said your future was looking bright, and that often means that something dimmed that light. Can you tell us a bit about what that was?
Yeah. Okay, I think from a high level point of view, it's just, let me just start it here. That dimming light was basically the end of my rugby career. Right? That meant everything I'd worked so hard for the past 12, 13 years towards a professional rugby career, which at that stage was semi-professional, was abruptly stopped. That was the end. And I'm sure you're wondering why. And this is that I remember I was done with my exams, I think 7th November, my matric year, and I then went home, I think on the 13th of November. Arrived home 13th November. The following day was the 14th November, of course. No, I left school on the 14th. The following day was the 15th. And on the 15th, my mom was just arriving home after work. And as she was putting up the drive-through, she was then, in guys obviously attempted to hijack her. And as I hijacked her, I then ran out to go help her. And unfortunately, when I was about 10 meters away from the guys, and there were three of them, one of the guys shot. And as he shot, I just tried to duck the bullet. The bullet pierced my elbow, and obviously went right through my rib, my diaphragm, punctured my lung, injured my kidney, went through my pancreas, and teared my stomach as well. So it was quite a severe, wound, and that was that, man. And I remember it so vividly. I remember just falling to the ground, and often you hear people say things like, "When you're dying, you're dying." At that moment, I knew I was dying, and I really was dying. You're dying. And I think what made the situation worse for me was that I'd ran full speed, obviously jumped over the wall to come help. So I was breathing quite heavily. My adrenaline was pumping quite hard, and my body was in shock after being shot. Right. So now, all those three, and being mindful of the fact that my lung had been punctured, and the bullet went through my diaphragm as well. So now, if you guys understand biology from grade 8, so they have the diaphragm and your two lungs. The diaphragm is the muscle that helps your lung to breathe. So obviously it contracts and expands, and as it contracts and expands, that's how you suck in air and breathe out. So that was taken away. I couldn't breathe because now the diaphragm had completely been obviously, like, just the bullet went right through. It was completely pierced by the bullet, so it was obviously in a spasm, so it couldn't do anything. So I had two lungs, but the one lung wasn't working because it was not punctured. And so, trust me, that was probably the most difficult thing I've had to go through, where I'll be sucking in air, and as soon as I suck in the air, it just vanishes. And that's probably one of the worst, if not the worst, experience I've been through, where as I suck, it just goes away, and I was just fading by the second. Eventually the guys just left the car, got in their getaway car, they got away because the car was stuck in a ditch. My sister managed to get the car out the ditch, get me into the car. At that stage, my mom was just in a world of her own, because what happens is that they pulled up to her, they opened up the door, and they hit her with the gun in the head quite severely, and then she dropped on the floor, and then she was just covered in blood. And so her head was just ringing. She actually didn't know that I was shot, because her head was ringing so much. So my sister managed to get the car, get me in, and then drive me to a public hospital, where the time we had gotten, now the entire time, now as soon as I dropped, as I said, is that my belief, my family's belief, we're obviously a Christian family, and so at that stage I just knew I was dying. So I was just on the floor. I was just praying. And because for me that was my place. I don't know. That's where my solitude was at. Like in my belief, as a Christian, is that I believe in Jesus. I believe in Christianity, and that's my belief. And obviously, as people have different beliefs, whatever it is, I strongly encourage people just get a place or believe a place where you believe you're at solitude, where you're at peace, where you're at ease, and where you're able to be with yourself, amongst yourself. So for me, that was it. So at that place, at that side, I was just praying, and then as my sister was driving to hospital, got to a point where I stopped praying. She was like, "No, don't stop praying. Keep praying, keep praying." Eventually, I was completely, like unconscious. Got there. As soon as we got there, they just gave me oxygen mask, and then I got conscious again. And then my mom came in. I saw her. She was just drenched in blood, and that was probably at that stage caused me more pain than the pain that I was in. No jokes, because her entire jersey, her skirt was just drenched in blood. Her entire face was just red, and that for me was a painful sight. But nonetheless, I was glad that she was alive and safe. And then, I was obviously in hospital at that stage, at the public hospital, and the doctor declared me, stable. Right. So now my family's trying to call and get me a bed at a private hospital, but then now they can't, because the doctor's saying I'm stable. But the private hospitals are only taking critical patients only. So that was the case. The shooting happened at about 5-6 in the evening. It was only till 11, like later that night, where our family doctor came and declared me, critical. Told the private hospitals, and they obviously dispatched an ambulance to come pick me up, which only arrived 5 o'clock the next morning. And then I only got to theatre at the private hospital 7 in the morning. Now, mind you, it had been 13 to 14 hours after the shooting, and my entire abdominal area was now, acute and contaminated. So as soon as I got in there, my sister was just weeping. She just signed all the papers to go in the theatre. I got into the theatre. They just cut me right open, and they took out all the organs, plugged in all the machines, and they said that if it had been another hour to 45 minutes of not being operated on, I would have died because of the contamination. Everything was just leaking. Although my body was still functioning and things were pumping, but it wasn't a closed system. Everything was pumping but leaking, So fortunately, I was very fortunate, and I just believe that it's God's grace that, everything just happened the way it did, that I just got to hospital just in time. And then it was an 8-hour operation, which was quite intense as well. And, an average operation is about, a big operation is generally 3 hours to 3.5 hours, but my operation, that was 8-hour operation, and they say my body collapsed, died twice on the operating table, because they tried to do everything in one go, but my body couldn't handle it because of the shock that it was in. So fortunately, I survived that, and I was in ICU then for the next month and a half. Supposed to be 6, but unfortunately it was only a month and a half. That due to my good physique, but yeah.